All right guys, so we're getting ready to mount the Camp King 270 Protector Series awning. We're gonna go ahead and mount it on the driver's side of our Jeep here. The awnings mount using specific bracketry that's made for both the Outback and the rooftop tent. Very similar to the rooftop tent, there's a set of brackets that mount through. There's a rear corner one that's very stout, and then there's bracketry up front. The one thing to note is there is a difference between the Outback bracketry and the one for the tent. And the main difference is the side of the tent profile is at a perfect 90 relative to the ground, where the Outback series is slanted, right? So the bracketry compensates for that so that when the awning is open, it's not tilted over, right? So there is a difference between the two brackets, whether or not you're using it for the rooftop tent or the Outback. Other than that, the install process is very similar between the two. We're gonna go ahead and start by mounting up the rear bracket in the awning, and then measuring out where this front bracket lands so that we can drill the corresponding holes accordingly. So we're gonna get going. We're gonna go ahead and unbox the Camp King awning, and we're gonna get going. One thing to note, you probably wanna pull the mattress as you're doing this so that all the metal shavings that we're gonna get from drilling through this aluminum here doesn't get into your mattress. You're gonna wanna be really careful using your X-Acto knife because there could be some exposed fabric. So I kinda try to take it at an angle sideways a little bit, and then a lot of times this tape will just kinda kick open. There's a little satchel bag here with the tie downs, should you need to or want to tie that to a stake. You'll notice which side is the back because it's got more protective covering. There's a little bit of cardboard, some extra padding. That's gonna delineate the side that goes on the back of the unit. Obviously that's gonna differ depending if it's a US driver or US passenger side. I believe these are care and install instructions that come with it from Camp King, so that's great. Camp King does a good job providing some anti-seize. This white anti-seize is kind of magic. The stainless steel hardware, if you get it too hot or if you wrench it down too fast, just like all stainless steel, will gall up. So you want to make sure you use that when you're tightening up the hardware. While Jason unpackages some of the packaging, I'm going to show you the rear bracket here. It goes one way. You can see here it follows the contour or the rear of the Outback, or if it's for one of the rooftop tents, the rear contour, and then it has a little lip to help kind of set it and secure it. And then it has two holes up top and then a long slotted hole. These are obviously built and made specifically for the Camp King Protector Series awning, but they do work with a host of other awnings as well. So really kind of a stout setup. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna sit up here on this corner and allow us to have the awning. There's enough offset here to clear the strut, but yet keep it nice and tight. A lot of times when we're mounting a tent to a rack system on a car, you gotta think about the awning and the rack compatibility. In this case, as long as you get the tent mounted, you can mount the awning because the awning is gonna be mounted to the tent itself. It eliminates a variable that you may not be able to control depending on what car, what rack, what tent, right? This being mounted onto the tent kind of helps that out. So nice thing to note. I'm gonna take the scale that we use to weigh some of our trucks. We're gonna stick the awning on there. It should weigh around 50 pounds. I weigh about 170 pounds. So let's just see, settles in, yep, right around 170. So it's pretty spot on. So we've got two of the scales down. Usually we use them under the tires. That way we'll put one end on each. Jason's gonna go ahead and set that down and we'll see what this bad boy weighs in at. Let it settle in. It's coming in right at 53 pounds. So pretty awesome given how solid this thing mounts, how freestanding, and obviously how much shade it gives. The tools that we're gonna need here to do the basic install, right? So you're gonna wanna get a Sharpie, you want to get a center punch. We've got a 1/8 drill bit here for pilot holes, a 5/16 for the final holes, and then we've got a couple of different sets of 13 mil sockets for these M8 bolts. These ledges here make it easy to locate exactly where it goes You're gonna wanna be careful to kind of set it down so that you are not going to, create any scratches or anything like that. I'm then gonna take my Sharpie, double check everything, and I'm going to mark these holes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's looking good. I'll pull this off. I can see those quite clearly. Then I'm gonna grab my hammer and my center punch. I'm gonna center punch those so that we can make good pilot holes. All right, so I've got the holes drilled. One extra little tool that can be helpful is the little reamer, just to make sure there's not any sharp edges hanging around that could potentially damage the unit aesthetically. All right, so we've got all the holes mounted up or drilled through, ready to mount, but we're gonna go ahead, we're actually gonna take that bracket, we're gonna mount it to the awning first, the rear part of the awning, set it up here, which will then allow us to mark the front holes. You don't have to do this, but Jason's taken a countersink bit here on our drill, and it just kind of helps round out that hole. So it's totally optional. We kind of think it makes that hole just a little bit cleaner. All right, so we're at the front mounting bracket here. I want to point out something with the actual bolts. Most of the bolts that we're using to attach the bracketry is a button head bolt like this one here. On the bottom, again, this thing's flipped upside down. On the bottom rail, we're gonna use a recessed bolt head here so that when this goes in, it's 100% flush against this rail. And the reason they do that is as the arms come in to rest, we don't want this button head sticking out and rubbing against that arm and also making it any thicker than it's needed. So a real nice kind of attention to detail piece from the folks at Camp King. So just note that. You're gonna see that in your hardware kit. You're gonna see all button heads, and then you're gonna see the recess style as well. So we've gone ahead, we've put the awning back in its bag. We've got these mounted up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna measure the distance from about here to where this bracket is, because we're gonna apply some blue tape onto the Camp King unit itself so that we can mark that up clearly. We're eventually actually going to take this bracket off, because the point that we're gonna mark is going to be the edges here, because it's a lot easier to mark. Then we're gonna pull this off and then mark the holes. It is a bit of an extra step, but it does ensure that you don't goof on marking these round holes. Because the bracket is on the awning, access in terms of marking these holes is a little bit more challenging. So we kind of elect to go a little bit longer route to ensure the accuracy. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure this. I'm gonna measure this from this front set of holes to about, this edge. And it's about 69 inches. So I think Jason, start taping maybe from 68 to call it 78, that 10-inch range. That should get us in the wheelhouse. I'm gonna stick my tape right around there. Go ahead and get that leveled up. Let me start with this first piece. Obviously it doesn't hurt to have more tape. Perfect. So that sums it up. We got the brackets tightened up. One thing I wanted to note that I'm not sure I mentioned, we did add, there are rubber washers to help with any sort of water or weather intrusion that we did, that come with the hardware that we did end up using here. But it's all set up, ready to go. keep saying fit and finish with the Camp King products, but that is what really stands out with this particular unit. First thing I'm going to mention is this is a totally 100% freestanding awning. Real freestanding. It has no pulls. It's not intended to be used with pulls. Obviously, you got to use some common sense. You're not going to set this up in gale force winds, but it's pretty darn stout as it's set up. The length of it is just longer than the Camp King tent, or in this case, the Outback series. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Real nice zipper here. I'm going to lay this cover over. I'm going to unstrap the fabric straps. Let this roll out. Nice little features. They give you a little bag here that holds this guy. Little clip. I'm going to release it a little bit. I'm just going to walk it out. Now, one of the things I notice, and we deal with a lot of 270 style awnings, is usually right here during this process is where all that leverage is. And if it's a little bit windy or you're by yourself, you're kind of rushing to get this open because heaven forbid, a little bit of wind catches it. On the Camp King unit, it's just not a problem. So anyways, I'm gonna finish opening this up. I'm gonna go ahead and secure it here. There's a cam buckle strap, and that's it. It's open. And so you'll see, you can strap this onto anything that's, over here. I'm just using that ladder bracket. One of the things that's nice is it does come a true 90 to the back of the vehicle, which is nice. It's not coming, out to here. It actually comes all the way in. Obviously works with the Outback series in terms of the doors. Now, at the heart of this is this big bracket here on the back end of the unit. You can see there are trusses coming out that really make this strong, right? It gives you an idea of how stout this is. It's a little bit windy today, nothing that obviously this couldn't handle, but I think, easily kind of hang a set of wetsuits out here or whatever you want. It's quite strong. The outside perimeter of the awning does have provisions for the awning walls. Those walls are side specific, just like the awning is. So you're gonna have a US driver side and a US passenger side. Those would zip on 1, 2, 3, and 4 walls. We'll do a separate kind of walkthrough about around the walls, but all the awnings come with provisions for that. And then they have attachment points for tie downs. Should it get really windy, you can attach the tie down points here and it'll prevent, in really windy situations from the awning coming out, additional tie down points here. So really nice. You can see that the fabric is incredibly taut. So that I don't know, it's just really nice. So they have attachment points here so that the fabric doesn't do any sort of excessive bouncing onto the structure. But yeah, it's a great setup. I think for us here on the Outback, we elected to go with a driver's side because this is an access point to the inside of the setup. Whether people are hanging out in here, or whether you're grabbing stuff out of here, whatever. Gives us protection out back here while we're cooking. Which is nice. And then we can access, if we wanted to get into the sleeping quarters through the ladder, we can do that on the passenger side there. So it's, we're really impressed with this unit.